Let's begin with the first section of this chapter, Globalization and the Indian Economy. First, let's talk about the introduction. After that, we will see the production across countries. Like I've told you, a brief example such as assemblage of a car. Different countries produce each part of a car. Finally, that entire car parts are bought into one country, and that country assembles all the parts and makes it into a car. So this is how production is done in each country, and these production parts are interlinked across country and assembled in one particular country, and that particular country exports it to different countries who are in need of that good, right? So in this we see the kind of the role MNCs, that is multinational companies, and the role of investments that bring about production across countries and interlinking the entire production process. Okay, so without wasting any time, let us begin with this section. So we know that we are consumers, and we are in need of some kind of goods and services to get on with our lives every day, right? And we also know that there are a lot of choices of goods and services. We have different kinds of cars, we have different kinds of teachers who teach us, we have different kinds of cobblers, we have different kinds of lawyers providing the same service but in a different way, right? Also, we have different kind of cameras around us, we have different kind of mobile phones, different company made televisions, and today we have all those within our reach, which means we can afford to buy something that is manufactured in a different country. So you must be wondering, so having access to all these goods and services that are produced in different countries are a newly created phenomenon. It wasn't there in the olden days. So back in the olden days, there were just cars like Ambassadors or Fiat. But now we have numerous kinds of different cars that are manufactured by Maruti, Suzuki, and etc. Right? So now we have different company made cars. And hence, in a matter of many years, our markets have been transformed. So basically, how do we even understand such kind of rapid transformations? And what are the kind of factors that are triggering these transformations? And once the market and everything has been transformed, how is that transformation even affecting the people's lives? So these are the main questions that this chapter, that is Globalization and the Indian Economy, is going to explain about. So now let us see the kind of production that happens in across different countries. So until the 1950s, right? Until 1950, production was largely organized within the countries. So what basically crossed the different boundaries of the countries were that of raw material, food stuff, and finished products. So these were the only ones that were crossing boundaries. So let us take example of India. So India was under the colonial rule of British, right? So we had a lot of resources of cotton. So what Indians did was we exported that raw material called cotton to British, and the British manufactured with the help of factories. They made clothes and sent it back to India for uh, our final consumption in the form of good clothes, right? So this is what is India's example. So what was the basic channel that was connecting different countries? It was trade. You send Our country sends something to another country, that country sends us back with something, that's also called as export and import. So when India is sending a kind of raw material to Pakistan, we say we are exporting this material. When Pakistan wants to send some kind of material to India, we say that we are importing this specific material from Pakistan. So this is exactly what constitutes trade, that is import and export. So this was the entire process that was happening before something called MNCs came up. So before MNCs came up, production was happening in separate separate countries. But once multinational corporations, that is MNCs, emerged, the entire scenario was changed. Let us see how it was changed. So, what exactly is an MNC? An MNC is a company that owns or controls production in more than one nation. So, that kind of a company is there in a large part of the world. It's not just concentrated at one nation, it is there in different parts of the world. So, they set up offices and factories for their own production in especially in areas where they can get cheap manpower, that is cheap labor, cheap kind of people who can give the service to do work. So this is basically done. Cheap raw materials and cheap manpower is generally looked when an MNC is establishing itself, because the MNC can finally get great profit out of it. So let us basically elaborate this entire scenario by taking the example of a call center. Right? So let us see how the production spreads through an MNC with the help of an example through a call center. So let me briefly read this small short story to you. So it is a large MNC producing industrial equipment, designs its products in research centers in the United States, and then has the main components manufactured in China. These are then shipped to Mexico and Eastern Europe, where the products are assembled and the finished products are sold all over the world. Meanwhile, the company's customer care is carried out through call centers located in India. So in this picture is talking to you about a call center that is located in Bengaluru, and it is equipped with different kind of facilities such as Wi-Fi, internet access, in order to provide information and support to the consumers abroad for those who are using that kind of finished product that was assembled in Mexico. Right? So in this example you are seeing that there's a large MNC and it is producing industrial equipment. They design their products and all the research kind of work is done in the United States. All the hardware kind of work is done in China. And everything combined together is finally shipped to Mexico and Eastern Europe, where the equipment, the research work and the hardware, everything is come together and the product is finally made. So once the product is made, it is multiplied. They make the same kind of product into a number of copies and they are sold all over the world. So any person in the world having a particular problem with this product can access the customer care, and this customer care is taken care by those people who are employed in India, as you can see in this picture before. So any problem that you have with the product will be resolved through the customer care. So this is exactly how it is interlinked. So in this entire case study that you've seen, the goods and services are produced worldwide. It is not just produced in one country, and this production is organized in increasingly complex ways. So in the example that I've earlier discussed with you, China has the advantage of being a cheap manufacturing location when it comes to hardware facilities. Okay, Mexico and Eastern Europe have the advantage because they are more close to the main markets of US and Europe. So US and Europe countries are the most populated countries where this demand of this product is high, and Mexico and Eastern Europe are located to these markets, right? So exporting that main product will be cost beneficial for them. And also India has very high skilled engineers when it comes to software and etc. So they can understand the different kinds of technical aspects of that kind of production. And also in India there are many English speaking youth, well spoken English youth, who can take care of the customer care services, as the majority of the people in the world speak in English, they can understand in English, and the engineers in India can provide a valid customer care to those people. So having this kind, So having this kind of different production at different areas can mean almost 50 to 60% cost savings for that particular MNC, right? So you can see the kind of profit it is ultimately making by saving on so many other things elsewhere. Now let us see how the interlinking is done between different countries. So in general, MNCs set up production. At what areas does MNC set up their base and factories and different kinds of production? At areas where it is close to the markets. Like I've discussed with you, that particular equipment that we discussed in the case study, those markets have high demand in Europe and USA. So Mexico in Eastern Europe are more beneficial, where there is skilled and unskilled labor available at low cost, because ultimately the MNCs are looking at cost saving and profit building. Where the availability of other factors of production is assured. For example, some kind of raw material. Suppose this MNC wants to set up a clothing factory, right? It makes more sense to set it up in India because there's a lot of cotton that is produced in India, and there is a lot of cheap labor when it comes to weaving and yarning of cotton. So this is how the availability of factors of production is plays an important role in the MNC setup. And MNCs may also look for different kinds of government policies that are there in that particular country, so that their interests are made sure they're all conformed to. So looking at these four factors, MNCs finally set up their base for production. So basically, when you're starting up a factory, you need land. You need a piece of land. And also, after you get that piece of land, you need to hire construction workers and start off the building, the main capital expenditure that is required. And also, it's a factory, so a lot of machines are required for the running of the making of product. And other equipments are definitely required. So to build an MNC or to start off with something, you need all these land building machines and other equipment, and that kind of money that is required to build all these, to buy all of these things and start off with something, is called as investment. So investment that is made by the MNCs is also termed as foreign investment. So any kind of investment is done or pulled into something with a slight hope that in the future they are definitely going to earn some profits. MNCs set up production jointly with some other local companies that are there in those particular countries. So what are the basic benefits that they acquire when they jointly set up production? Let us see. So MNCs will basically provide money for investments like buying new machines for faster production. And MNCs may bring with them the kind of latest technology and give it to these local companies. So finally, they increase on their technological usage. But what the most number of MNCs do is they buy the different kind of local companies that are there in those specific countries, and they expand their footprint, right? So I will give you an example. There are around 6 football manufacturing companies that are there in the state of Karnataka. An MNC comes into picture here, an MNC which is solely invested in making very good quality footballs. So they buy all the 6 companies, and they take the advantages of each company that is there, and they remove the disadvantages, and finally bring together the different kinds of technologies that they have and the different kind of research work that these local companies have gathered, and finally end up making very good footballs that are finally sold in different countries like Europe, the USA, etc., where footballs are in great demand. So this is how MNCs tend to expand production. Please take a look at this. This is an example of Cargill Foods, right? So Cargill Foods is a very large American MNC, and it has brought many smaller Indian companies such as Parak Foods. So Parak Foods are small companies that are located in India, and they had built a large marketing network in various parts of India where the brand name is very well reputed. Also, Parak Foods had four oil refineries whose control has now shifted to Cargill. Hence, now that Cargill has taken over Parak Foods, Cargill is now the largest producer of edible oil in India with the capacity to make almost 5 million pouches of edible oil daily. So, this is how Cargill Foods exactly has expanded its footprint throughout India and increased its production. You should also know the MNCs have a lot of money to make investments and hence they have a lot of power and influence. So there's another way in which MNCs control production. One way is they buy up the local companies. So there's another way, let us see what that is. So large MNCs in developed countries place orders for production with small producers in the developing countries. So for example, let us take some products that are developed via this method, that is garments, footwear, sports items. These MNCs then take these kind of products that are developed in these developing countries and put in their brand name and sell it throughout the world. Also, once these large MNCs, they have the advantage to determine the price, the kind of quality these clothes or garments or footwear have, and the kind of labor conditions of these distant producers. So I'll give you a brief example of the kind of sports item. Suppose you're looking for football. Football is in great demand in the European countries, but also these many footballs are manufactured in countries like India because it's again cheap raw material, cheap labor cost, and these footballs are exported to the European countries where European countries put a brand name and sell these footballs at a higher cost. So higher the brand name, higher the selling power. Hence, so these are the ways in which MNCs are spreading out their production and interacting with the different kind of local producers in the different countries. So how do they do that exactly? I will repeat it again. They set up partnerships with local companies. They use the local companies for their basic supplies like raw materials. And they closely compete with the local companies or completely buy them up. For example, Cargill Foods, what they did with Parak Foods. So as a result, production in these widely dispersed locations is constantly getting interlinked from one area to another.